Good morning, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. Toastmasters Club 9523 is called to order. I'd like to welcome those of you in our viewing audience as well as our guests here at the beautiful Anderson Center at 7855 Mile Road. We'd like to invite all of you to join us the third Saturday of each month where we have our meetings. I'd also like to welcome our guests today. I'd like to welcome Roy Roberts, James Carter, and Kim Fetzer. And as always, we're looking forward to a great meeting. I feel Toastmasters is a great opportunity for anyone who needs to improve their speaking skills, possibly to make themselves more marketable or to do better at work. It's a great opportunity to come down and improve that part of your skill set, because all of us have a toolbox we're trying to sell to various companies. I think this is one great way to improve that part of your toolbox. So, like I said, give us a try, third Saturday of each month down at the Anderson Center. And also for those of you in the audience, just stay with us for the next hour, and I think you'll be very entertained, and you'll see some great examples of how Toastmasters can really help your communication skills. So with that, I'd like to welcome our Toastmaster for today, Mr. Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters, our honored guests that are here with us today, and our home audience that's looking in. Well, we have a real good meeting today. We have several prepared speeches that we're going to hear. We'll have Tabletopics, which is the opportunity to hear some people think and speak on their feet on a topic that they have just been given. Then we will also have evaluations, so we will get some feedback on how everyone did today as well as our meeting. What I'd like to do is start our meeting with our word power and counter. She's also going to be our grammarian today, so we need to watch what kind of sentence construction we're using. The individual that I'm going to introduce for our word power is a woman well known to Toastmasters, especially in the Cincinnati area. And with that, I'm going to welcome Carol Cormelink. Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, and especially our viewing audience. As Steve said, my duties as a grammarian is to pick up good sentences that you use to comment on those, and if you made any mistakes in the grammar, cliches and overused words, plus using the word of the day. That's the grammarian part of my role. The all-counter part is what I'm going to be concentrating more on because I'm being evaluated on it. So I will pay attention to all your ahs, ers, you knows, so, lip smacks. The word of the day is wool gathering, which means indulgence in idle fancies, wandering of the mind resulting in lack of attention. So stop your wool gathering and eat your vegetables. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Carol. Wool gathering. I think that's one of those things I do sometimes when I'm sitting at the stoplight, if I'm not frustrated with a person in front of me. The next part of our meeting is that portion where we do impromptu speaking. And one of the advantages of this part of the meeting is that it gives us practice in speaking on a broad range of topics for which we've had very little time to prepare. And it reflects our speaking that we probably do fairly often during the course of a day in our jobs or whatever we're engaged in. Before I introduce our speaker today, I was thinking about Darren's introduction this morning, and we have the inauguration this next Tuesday. One of the things I think about is last spring we had our Tabletopics session, and the question that I was asked was if you could give some guidance to the incoming president, whoever that would be, because we didn't know at that time, what would I want to tell them? And I started my speech with they would have my condolences because they would be inheriting one of the biggest messes that we have ever had in this country. Boy, I had no idea how on target that would be. I mean, I thought I'd have been very happy to be proven wrong for that. But nonetheless, we're going to have to work through all of this. Our Tabletopics master today is Jerome Manigan, and he'll be calling on members in our audience here. Help me welcome Jerome.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Members and friends, the goal of Tabletopics is to provide an opportunity for the development of extemporaneous speaking skills and to eliminate wool gathering. To that end, today's speakers will offer advice about several topics. Each response will be between 1 and 2 minutes. Sheila Mudd Baker, would you join me? How are you today? Sheila, on Tuesday, we will inaugurate a new president. His chief of staff has called you and said, Mrs. Mudd Baker, would you please come to Washington? President Barack Obama would like to speak with you. And you say, what is it he wants to talk with me about? And the chief of staff says, he wants you to offer him advice regarding the economy. What would you tell him?
This is a case where I would be the deer in the headlights because I can't even handle my own checkbook. I barely know what I'm doing from week to week. So the questions about the economy would be good. I know that my advice would be get the best brains in the world, not just in the country. Get the best brains in the world and talk to people who have been highly successful in getting through bad times from all over the world and ask them their advice. But I would also say no matter what they say, it still comes down to what you have to think about it. You can take the best advice, but you're still going to have to make a decision, and that decision may be right, it may be wrong, you won't know. But I am so glad he didn't ask my opinion because I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did.
Thank you so very much. Next would Mr. James Carter, a visitor to today's meeting, join. We're happy to have you as a visitor today.
Thank you.
And we wanted to give you an opportunity to show our viewers and the members here present today an example of no wool gathering. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Much concern is expressed for the environment. What advice would you give those individuals and organizations advocating for renewable energy sources?
Well, this is what I would say. One of the things I think we can do to conserve energy really is this is something very simple, but one of the things I think we can do is run less water. Because one of the things I know I have a tendency of doing is when I'm washing my hands, or washing dishes, I can, have a tendency to let the water just run. So that's one of the things we could do is to conserve energy or save energy is try to save water. Because I'm a big offender of that, and I've seen a lot of people offended that too, running more water when they don't really need to water, and sealing up your windows. They can conserve a lot of energy too.
Thank you very much. Two very good ideas. Conserve water and seal windows to prevent energy loss. Thank you, Carol.
Mr. Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, you might say that I was wool gathering because I was evaluating his performance. Loss. I suffered a loss September the 7th when my husband passed away. I suffered a loss Wednesday when my brother passed away, and the funeral's tomorrow. So I'm learning to deal with grief and to celebrate the life rather than to grieve their death. And that's, to me, is you always have memories. Those can't be taken from you. You have the good memories that you built with that person, and if you dwell on the happy times that you had, it will minimize the loss. And I know that other people have suffered loss, and sometimes you may hold yourself together very well, and months later, something happens that you lose it. And when I went to visit my brother on Wednesday, I was there for 3 hours, 20 minutes before he died. And when I walked in, that reminded me of my husband, and I lost it. And I walked out of the room, and they said, come back here, you can cry in here. And so I held together very well at my husband's funeral, but you lose it other times. So it's good to remember the good times, and that loss won't hurt as much. Mr. Tabletopics Master.
Thank you very much, Carol. Roy, what advice would you give to people who are looking for new activities, new opportunities?
Okay. I think that people who are looking for new activities, new opportunities, should try to stay open-minded and sort of, rather than be goal-oriented, be creative and come up with fresh ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. Mary, you're so involved in so many things. Both of us read for radio reading services, and that's just a great opportunity. And I would encourage members of this group and people who are watching today's program to consider volunteering for that organization. It's a wonderful organization, and you certainly can develop even more speaking, reading skills. Now, Mary, I have a question for you.
Okay.
And that question revolves around this. What do you, as a member of TV Toastmasters, say to people about the advantages of membership in this club or in Toastmasters?
Okay. What I would say is that everyone should have an opportunity to get up and express what they want to say. I feel that getting up here is one of the greatest things you can do. Me, now I'm the biggest chicken in the world to stand up in front of this camera, but I've done it. And I just feel everyone should join and everyone should have an opportunity. And thank you very much.
And I would like to thank the people who joined me at the podium to express their ideas and to offer us advice. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jerome. Tabletopics is also the part of our meeting where we can make sure everyone who is attending and doesn't have a formal role in the meeting, that they still do have an opportunity to come up and speak. At this point, we will begin our prepared speeches, and what the next speeches are that you're going to be seeing are presentations that the individuals have prepared. They are working on a specific project associated with one of the TV Toastmaster, and basically they're using Toastmasters International's material, but it is one of the speaking manuals, and it's a specific project that they're working on. They have objectives that they will be trying to achieve, and then we will see later in our meeting the evaluations that they'll be receiving about how well they have achieved what they were trying to accomplish with that presentation. Our first prepared speech that we will be hearing today is coming to us by Tiffany Everett. She's going to be presenting a speech entitled Speak Up. It is from the Competent Communicator Manual, project number 6. Tiffany is currently the area governor over 6 clubs in the Cincinnati area. Today is going to be a status report on how TV Toastmasters is doing as a club and overall how we're doing as a group. Help me welcome Tiffany.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Good morning, members of our studio audience and our television audience, as well as the guests. As Steve mentioned, I am the area governor over this club and 5 other clubs in northeastern Cincinnati. And we're a little halfway over our Toastmaster year. Now, I could say at the beginning of the year that we had several clubs that were wool gathering. They thought, we're going to be perfect, we're going to be 10 for 10, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Well, as we all know, if we want anything, we've got to work to earn it. So where is TV Toastmasters right now as we look at everything? I could say that TV Toastmasters is on track to be a distinguished club and to gain another ribbon for our banner right behind us. So far this year in the Toastmaster Distinguished Club plan, we have 2 points, with the 3rd point coming shortly with our officers completing their winter officer training. However, we have to stay on track and not be wool gathering by completing our awards that we have, our competent communicators, which I'm giving a speech today from the Competent Communicator Manual, as well as working on our leadership manuals, our advanced manuals. But the most important thing we have to remember is we can't do this without members. Currently, if we were to be given the award today, we would not qualify because we don't have the membership base of 20 people. And that's what I'm striving for you as the members in our audience and at the studio, is to think about what can Toastmasters do for you. From my experience, Toastmasters has given me the opportunity to practice in the safe environment, to make the mistakes that can be made in the safety of my meeting versus making them at Fifth Third Bank, making them in other places where I go where it's going to count. Toastmasters gives you confidence. And being in this club for a little over a year, I have seen so many people grow, so many people develop their skills, so many people being able to say, I can do it, and not be a chicken and run away. As we know, if we wool gather, we're not going to get anywhere. When I first started this year, I had 5 clubs. I now have 6. We have a brand new club that members of this group have been mentoring and nurturing to be where we are in the future. So what can I say that this club needs to work on? This club needs to work on 3 things. First and foremost, bringing your competent leadership manuals with you to the meetings. If you're doing a role such as being a grammarian, such as being a timer, being a Tabletopics master, or giving a Tabletopics speech, get credit for the role. Review the project. Find out what you're working on. If you're working on time management skills, if you're working on giving criticism, taking feedback, read the book, review the project that's needed, and ask somebody to give you an evaluation as long as you are prepared for it. Number 2, have a prepared speech ready. You never know when things are going to happen. I'll give you an example. Last week I was at a meeting. A speaker dropped out and they came to me and said, do you have a speech ready? I said, yes, I did. Grabbed it out in my back pocket and I gave that speech right then and there and got credit for it. You never know when you're going to have to do something that you're going to have to be prepared for ahead of time. Toastmasters has taught me how to be a prepared speaker and how to handle stress and tough situations. If you don't have the opportunity to practice in this environment, you're not going to be able to handle it elsewhere. Number 3 that we could work on as a group, encourage each other. If somebody hasn't shown up, give them a phone call and say, what's going on? How are things doing with you? What can I help you with? How can I make things better for you? Because we've all been in this situation where we want to quit. We don't want to make it through giving a speech. We don't think we can do that. You're not going to be able to do it if you quit. Quitting is not an option, because if you quit at this, you're going to quit at other things in life. And this club has a bunch of people who are successful, who have not quit, who have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, as they say. I'm going to leave you with this. I see a lot of potential with this club, not only in this room, but spreading out in the community. I'm here as a cheerleader. I'm here as a support. I'm not the one that's going to be doing all the work. It's everyone here. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tiffany. Our next speaker that we have today is another one of our well-known Toastmasters. He's also one of the charter members of this club. His name is Rick Davis, He's going to be giving us a presentation out of the Humorous Speech Manual. It's project number 5. His speech is entitled, A Modest Proposal, and we do need to take a moment to set up for his presentation.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and audience. A modest proposal. I think you've heard me before talk about another modest proposal that I had, and it's gotten very little traction, which is to eliminate daylight savings time. I've made a valid argument that we should eliminate daylight savings time, but this is even a more modest proposal, I think. Over Christmas, I was reading a book called How the States Got Their Shapes by Mark Stein, and this is fascinating. Most of the states got their shapes because of political reasons, not necessarily because of any geographical, population centers, these sorts of things. And so, because the lines were drawn because of politics, I think it's time to go back and revisit how the states are drawn. It's time to go back and, with a new president, a new administration, let's rethink how the states should be shaped. So this is my modest proposal. And we start out, of course, where the United States started out, up here with the 13 colonies. And there's no reason why we have to have 13 colonies. These are too small. These states are absolutely too small. If you've ever lived in a place like Vermont or New Hampshire, it's so small, you know, you can walk across the state in a day. So I think we should do a little consolidation here. Instead of 13 colonies, let's talk about maybe 4 or 5 states. That would probably do it. Also, I think we should get rid of any state that has a new in their name. I think that just indicates that we're related to those British folks, and there's no reason why we need to play nice with them anymore. You know, we're all Americans. But certainly something like Rhode Island, Connecticut, you know, let's get rid of them. There are some states that are too big. There's some states that are too big. New York, if you've ever driven across New York on I-90, it just goes forever and ever and ever. You start out here and then you go all the way down here. I think we can get rid of, I think we can divide New York into a couple of states. And I suggest, you know, that we maybe even give New England a few of the, you know, a little bit of New York. It'd make it a lot easier to drive across if it wasn't there. Also, I think New York City should be its own state. You know, it's just, it's completely different than the rest of New York. There's some things here that are just, you know, abominations. You know, the fact that Pennsylvania sort of sticks out a little bit and you know, just so it gets a port on Lake Erie, that makes no sense. Today, who cares about lake traffic? I mean, it's just you know, let's give it to New York and forget about it, right? Now, there's some states that absolutely need to be redesigned, need to be rethought. And one of them is West Virginia. West Virginia looks like somebody, you know, took out a wad of gum and stuck it on a map and kind of spread it out. And it's got this thing sticking up here between Ohio and Pennsylvania. And it's kind of got a piece hanging here. I think somebody should just, you know, draw a nice little oval, you know, make it a nice oval. In this day of GPS, there's no reason why we can't have a nice oval state. That would be nice. The other thing is, if we have a West Virginia, we should have an East Virginia, and we should have a North Virginia, and we should have a South Virginia. And let's get rid of this name. This is a crazy name. We have another, you know, we have other problems like that. We have a North Dakota and a South Dakota, but we don't have any East or West Dakotas, you know. Maybe we could get rid of Minnesota and call it, you know, East Dakota. It seems like a reasonable thing. I don't know. Anyway, did you know that this little, the little tip down here, this little panhandle for Missouri, was that the reason for that is because there was a wealthy landowner that didn't want to be in Arkansas, and this is true. And so he managed to talk the politicians into giving this little piece of property, his piece of property to Missouri rather than to Arkansas. So I think we just draw the line, you know, and cut it off, forget about it. There's some other things that we need to think about. Oh, Oklahoma. Oklahoma has this panhandle hanging out here, and there's no reason for that. In fact, I think Texas needs to be completely redesigned, and I think we'll just cut it off here, you know, and give Amarillo to Oklahoma. It seems reasonable to me. I think we should try to make everything a squarer. You know, I think the like Wyoming and Colorado, New Mexico. Those are the states that we should be looking towards to really divide the states up. And those were really thought out a little more carefully. You know, they're a little big, but, you know, Idaho has a strange shape, and actually, if you read the book, there was initially it was supposed to look more rounded at the top, but I don't think there's any reason why we just can't take the border of Wyoming and just extend it up, and kind of cut Montana in half. I think that would make for a much nicer state. Now, California's shape is really interesting because before the politicians really had a chance to get out here and figure out where the border should be, California, they discovered gold and they had established seaports and all that sort of thing. So California made its own decision about where its border should be. And there's no state that should be allowed to do that. California should probably be divided at least into 2 states, maybe into 4. We could have an East California, North California, South California, West California. I think that would be pretty good. And this whole thing with Nevada, it's ridiculous. But anyway, so I have this modest proposal, and I think, with a new administration, with a new Congress, with everybody looking up and excited, that this is the time to redraw the states. Let's get them, squared up, looking better, make it a little easier. There's no reason why we have to have 50 states. There's no reason why Alaska has to go all the way down here. Let's give that piece to Canada. Give it back to Canada. We don't need it. It's time to fix it all. Fix it the way it's supposed to be. Mr. Toastmaster?
Very entertaining speech, Rick, and I had no idea why some of those states are shaped the way that they are. At this point, we will have our evaluation component of the meeting. This is the time when we will get feedback for the presenters today. They're going to hear from their evaluator what they did well, and also be given some things to think about incorporating in their future speeches. Our general evaluator today is Laura Lee Gayfield, and if you would help me welcome Laura. Laura Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I am the general evaluator of today's meeting, so I have been watching the speeches, and I will also lead the team of evaluators who have been working off camera during the table topics and prepared speech portions of the meeting to tell us how we did overall in the particular area that they are focused on for today's meeting. We will start off with the evaluators for our prepared speeches. Please welcome the evaluator of Tiffany Everett's speech, who is Sheila Mudd-Baker. Sheila?
Thank you, Ms. General Evaluator. Tiffany Everett's subject was speaking up, but it was speaking up about Toastmasters. And as our area governor, she looks at all of the clubs in her area. And this would not be a topic I would think would call for a lot of vocal variety. So I was genuinely surprised to see as much vocal variety as I did in this speech. If I was thinking of vocal variety, I'd perhaps want a little drama. And it's a little hard to have drama about organizing things, but it's possible. She has shown us that. Tiffany's volume was excellent. Her rate of speech was good. It would have been nice to have, excuse me as I poke my nose, it's winter. It's winter. You know how it drives us all crazy. If Tiffany had varied her rate a little more, that would have made it even more interesting. It was already a varied rate, but a little more variety would have been very helpful. Pitch was varied and conversational, and that's what we would be looking for in one of these reports. Quality of Tiffany's voice was pleasant, and she was expressive in a subdued manner. That is, it's difficult to get rah-rah cheerleaderish about essentially a report about our club and clubs, but she still managed to get a lot of expressiveness in there. It was very organized, well organized, logical beginning, middle, and end. The body language was natural and expressive. I liked the fact that Tiffany used her hands a lot and didn't go that big, because that's not necessary for television. It's not necessary for a relatively small audience. And her body language was very natural and expressive too. One of the things I very much liked was Tiffany used the banner behind her as part of her expression, making sure that we got a little more color and life into this speech. And at one point, Tiffany said first, and then second. So she used her hands in a different way than using it in this way. What could she have done to make it even better? Well, when Tiffany was talking about the communications manual, she could have held up a copy of that manual so that people would say, oh, there actually is a book. It's not a textbook. It seems to be, it's a fairly thin little book with guidelines. I think it would have helped. Let me say first, Tiffany used to squint a lot because of all these lights. She has reduced your squinting to practically nothing, but she still managed to squint a few times. So that's something she's going to continue to work on that would have made it even better. And what was wonderful is I only noticed it once. So that has shown great progress in the time that she's been here. And I also liked that Tiffany used the word of the day, wool gathering, several times. I think she may have won the award of the day for using it the most. Altogether, a very good speech, and I'd like to tell Tiffany. I'd like to change Tiffany's name to Stephanie, clearly. I'd like to tell Tiffany that I enjoyed her speech, and I look forward to further speeches.
Thank you, Sheila, for providing Tiffany with effective feedback, what she did well and what she can work on in the future, and some of the things that she has been working on that you noticed as well. The evaluator for Rick Davis's speech, the humorous one with the big map, is Darren Henderson. Please welcome Darren Henderson to evaluate Rick's speech.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Rick. And Rick, I knew you'd have something special for us today when I saw the map this morning. First of all, I thought it was a very good premise, very interesting, very original. When you think about humorous speeches, you normally think of someone getting up and talking about some humorous anecdote which happened, but this was a great play on a different type of humorous speech. I know as a kid, I'm kind of a geography nerd. I actually like geography and maps and all that those kinds of things. And when I was a kid, I remember putting together the little map of the United States with all the 50 states pieces. And even as a kid, I thought, boy, I wonder who in the world thought about, came up with this geography. And a lot of it I thought was based upon rivers and geography. So it was very interesting to determine that a lot of it was just based upon politics. I thought it was very good. And one of the things that made it very interesting is that you had a very casual manner about it. And it was almost like you were just, rearranging your living room, yeah, just do this, just do that. And also, you're a little bit annoyed, a little bit pissed off about the whole thing, I could tell. It's like it really annoys you that they came up with these types of states, and that way that they were laid out like that. I also thought you came up with some very good originality when you came up with certain rules like, no new states. Then something as sacred as the 13th colonies, you say, well, there are 13 colonies. I understand they're sacred, but hey, they're too small, So I thought it was great how you actually put some thought into some of the things you were coming up with. I also thought it was great that you mixed in some of the historical facts. You were, the main purpose of the speech was to be funny. However, you also mixed in some great historical facts regarding, the little tip with Missouri and in Pennsylvania, that apparently they just created that so they could have a spot on I think it's the Lake Erie, I can't remember which lake it was. So I thought that part was great. The only thing I could think of that may have made the speech better, because also one other thing, I thought the prop was excellent. I thought you chose a very good map. Some of the standard maps that we see in the stores are not quite as bright as the one you came up with. The one you came up with had different colors and it was very vibrant. It was much easier to follow what you were looking at. The only thing I thought that could have made the presentation even more powerful is if you could have, for example, when you talk about West Virginia being this oddly shaped state, you said, let's make it an oval. You could have just cut out an oval with tape on the back and just said, bam, there we go. And just done that in a couple spots, and that would have just added a little bit more color to the speech. But overall, first of all, great presentation, also very original, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Darren, for observing Rick's speech and putting together those comments. And thank you to both of our evaluators for not wool gathering while your speakers that you were evaluating were giving their presentations. Now we have a couple of reports for the meeting overall, starting with our all-counter and grammarian report given to us by Carol Cormelink. Carol.
Hello, everyone. For the grammarian report, I have not been wool gathering. I'm waiting. My sister is coming from the airport, and I have to connect with her, so I've had half an ear on the meeting and half an ear from my phone. Wool gathering. That was a great word. Quit pounding on the lectern. That was a great word. That was used more than any word that I think we've had before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 times it was used, and I just used it again when I said that, so that was 10 times. And Tiffany had the most. You did 3 times wool gathering. I am really pleased with the lack of ums and ahs today, especially with our brand new people who have not been on camera before or been up there. James, with your unexpected reply to the question, you had only 2 ahs. That is fantastic. And Roy, you had only 2 with your great answer. Very good. Mary, you had none on your table topics. Nicki just had 1 so. That was great. Tiffany, I didn't hear any. I did notice your body language. Rick, this is a DTM. You hardly ever hear him say and. When he was making up all this funny stuff today, he had 2 so's, 1 5, 10, 15, 17 uhs, 6 and uhs, and I think he said across. I think he had a T on the across. I'm not sure. That's what I thought I heard. He had 12 you knows, and he had several double clutches. This is unusual. You can tell he was making all this stuff up when he was talking because he was having a lot of pauses in her. Steve, I did not hear anything on you. Sheila, just 1 well and 1 and. And I would not have paid attention. If I had not been an all-counter, they were not distracting. I was only listening for them because of being all-counter. I would not have heard them otherwise. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Carol, for such a detailed report. And I, as a general evaluator, will be evaluating today's meeting overall. There were a couple of things that I noticed right off the bat, and Steve and Darren both used at the very start of the meeting in a transition from what they were talking about to their introduction, the "and with that." Jerome chimed in slightly different with his "to that end" phrase, so maybe a pause or at least 1 less from somebody or a different variation would be something that we could strive for. Our table topic speakers, Jerome, your voice is wonderful. It is well paced. You speak very deliberately and slowly and enunciate very well. And I liked that in your introduction of what Table Topics is about, that you also included the time frame and the objective of Table Topics. When I'm the Table Topics master, I usually forget one or the other, so you hit those on both points. Sheila, great succinct response to your table topic. And sometimes you can either be, anybody can either be too short or ramble on too long with too many ums and ahs on an answer that they don't particularly have, or a question that they don't particularly have an answer to, but you're a pro at this and smoothed all that over. James, kind of caught you off balance there a little bit with your first time on Table Topics. There's a first time for everything. Your voice was fine. I'd like to see you slow down and enunciate just a little bit better. I could understand you sitting in the front row, but I'm not sure how well it'll pick up on the camera. Watching Jerome would be a great example of how that can be done. And Roy, it was also your first time, probably caught you off a little bit. I think he was a little shocked. But you did fine, so that you did great. Thank you very much, both of you, for participating in Table Topics the first time. And Mary, that was the best Table Topics I think I've seen you seen. You smiled, your voice was very comfortable. I know you were shaking just a little bit, but it didn't show up in your voice. If I hadn't been sitting right in front of you, I would have noticed. I was very proud of you because I know you do have a hard time, and you set a great example for others that they can really overcome it with practice, even if it is sometimes in spite of yourself. Sheila gave a very detailed evaluation of Tiffany's speech, some things to work on, some things that she did quite well. Darren had the same philosophy as we should for Rick's speech, but to the both of you, it's not the tip of Missouri, it's the boot heel of Missouri from there. But that's okay. That was part of what made it humorous, the tip or the end or whatever that is. It's a boot heel. Carol is a very interesting word that you had found for the day. I wasn't even sure it really was a word, but that's part of it. And apparently the idle fantasy thing we tune into very well because we were able to use that quite a bit. And Christine, thank you for pitching in at the last minute and doing the timer report for us. You did a great job and we appreciate your help. And now I will turn it back over to our Toastmaster today, Steve Ahrenholz. Steve.
Thank you, Laura Lee, for an excellent general evaluation. Laura Lee gave us a very good example of the general evaluator's role. She provided us with some insight into how our overall meeting was conducted. She also gave us feedback for all the other parts of the meeting where we didn't have formally assigned general evaluators. You had one sentence when you were talking about Mary Arm's table topic, and it was the best you've seen her seen or something like that. I think you meant you have seen her do. But good job, Laura Lee. One of the things I'd like you all to join me with at this moment is a round of enthusiastic applause for today. I've caught some comments that we've been rather lethargic on this real cold January morning. So let's have a round of applause for all of our participants today. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to our club president, Darren Henderson. Darren?
See, with that, and with that, I will accept the lectern. I think it was a great meeting. I agree with Steve. And at this point, I'd like to bring up our area governor, Tiffany Everett, for a few comments regarding Toastmasters and why it is important for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. President. Toastmasters is an international organization that gives people an opportunity to practice their speaking skills in a safe environment. This is one club of 50 in the greater Cincinnati area. This club meets the third Saturday of the month in Anderson Township. If you have a time frame that you are looking for, you can check out Toastmasters at www.toastmasters.org and look at the Find a Club to find a club in your area. We would love to have you here, but if you want to find another club, you're more than welcome there. As I said, this is international. It looks great on your resume. So for those of you who are looking for a job and want to practice up on being able to answer those questions that are asked by an interview, this is a place to practice. I highly recommend Toastmasters to everyone. I have seen several people get promotions because of Toastmasters. I've seen several people be able to get that dream job that they want because of Toastmasters. But you can't do it just sitting on your butt at home watching television. You've got to get up. You've got to come to a meeting and you have to participate. The thing that I like the most about Toastmasters is that it's your pace. It's not somebody saying, well, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. It's what you want to do. I might have to give you a good swift kick in the pants if you aren't doing anything and haven't done anything for 6 months. But it's what you decide you want to do. If you want to have more information, go to www.toastmasters.org and find yourself a club. Mr. President.
Thank you, Tiffany. I like to draw some analogies between Toastmasters and exercise, because coming up here and speaking is just like if you go to the gym and exercise your body, make it healthier. Coming to Toastmasters really helps to exercise your mind and your speaking skills. And one other analogy is that when I go to the gym, I may drag in, I may not really want to go, but once I'm done, I feel great. Well, I'll guarantee you, Rick probably feels the same way after he gave his speech. When I come here and give a speech on a Saturday morning, I may stay up late on Friday night working on it, and I may say, boy, I wish I didn't have to give a speech tomorrow morning. But after I give that speech, when I leave here on Saturday, I feel great. And it's the same thing. It takes a little bit of effort to get going, but once you're done with it, you feel great about yourself, and it's a great way to start a weekend, trust me. With that, we also had two gentlemen who spoke for the first time at Toastmasters. We had two guests, and they both came up and gave table topics today. And I'd like to invite either of them up to give a closing comment regarding the meeting, if either of you would wish. Roy Roberts and James Carter. Any comments from either one of you?
I would like to say, first of all, I was shocked to give my tabletop discussion, but I'm looking forward to the next time I make a speech. It was thinking on my feet. I felt totally unprepared, but perhaps I'll do better the next time. Thanks for the opportunity.
James, any comments? Okay, that's fine. You know, it's interesting. Roy told me this morning, he said, you know, I think I'd asked him about giving a comment, and he told me, I really don't want to give up and talk today. And then Jerome more or less forced his hand, which was great, because Roy, in Roy's line of work, he talked to me, he speaks a lot in his line of work, so I don't think giving speeches up here is really that much different than what you do on a daily basis. And you actually seem very comfortable up here compared to most people who get up here for the first time, so I think you'll do very well. And I'm looking forward to you joining our club and becoming a member and giving your first speech. I hope that'll happen in short order. A couple other comments. We do have our International Speech and Evaluation Club contest during the next meeting in February. And we also have the area contest, the International Speech and Evaluation Area Contest, on Tuesday, March 31st at 6 p.m. Once again, I'd like to thank the audience for joining us. And once again, we meet the third Saturday of every month at 9 a.m. at the Anderson Center at 7850 5 Mile Road. And with that, TV Toastmasters Club 9523 is adjourned.